Hello there folks, Ungainly Titan here, and we're back to Fort Triumph again. Having arrived at the end, you finish up with 3 contracts, and I decided in this particular, to actually do one of the contracts. So the first one I did, it was during the, as you can see, the 8.01 update, was the Breach, the Magical Breach contract. Now I'm going to skip a lot of the world exploration. The Wishing Well is actually a very amusing fight and it's well worth doing. But essentially you just wander around the world, you've got so much movement that you can expend in a day, and you can explore anything, go anywhere, and interact with any of the icons you see. Some of them generate random encounters. The bridges are almost invariably held, and you generally have to fight your way across the bridges. Now, I haven't fought at a bridge since the new update, so I don't know what the new bridge map is like. So when you arrive at the breach, you find the Storm Hands and the World Shapers are at daggers drawn, or at least wands drawn, and they are arguing about what to do, and you choose a side. So I choose the Mending Breach side, which put me on the side of Dr. Epsteven Girdleweaver, and on the opposite side of Professor Barnaby Pettyworth. It was a tough fight. I actually had a lot of trouble with this, which is why I have a transition here, because I actually, most of the time I actually loaded from the other side and I just couldn't finish it. Dr. Epsteven Girdleweaver kept dying on me, and the basic objective is to keep a man alive, defeat the other crowd, and stop them from doing what they need to do. So you have to interfere with or kill their student that goes up onto the breach to consume it, and you have to defend and protect your student that goes up onto the breach to mend it. And there goes their student, and here goes our student. And if there's no student up there, your team spawns a student and sends one up every turn. These magical colleges do not have a health and safety policy, particularly with regards to students, at the rate at which they were burning through them. And so I put my mage on the defend the breach to prevent the other crowd from getting out the breach duties, and set the rest of the party into basically pushing back the opposition team so that we could they wouldn't have access to the breach basically, and we could push them back and kill them off essentially. So the professor disappears, the enemy professor, until the breach situation is resolved, and you have to keep your guy alive as well. So Dr. Epsteven Girdleweaver has to be kept alive. I think my biggest problem was this was pretty early on playing this game, and I really hadn't clued into the notion of use terrain, particularly the use of stunning effects. So you bouncing people off of objects onto other objects almost guarantees a stun, and stuns are really powerful. And I didn't really appreciate when I was playing this how powerful the stunning effects and the stunning mechanics are. So it is really want to be looking at how do you line people up so that you can stun people, because stunning robs them of actions. A stunned character has only one action, so they can move or they can attack, but they can't generally do both. And if you set things up, they won't be able to attack you, they'll have to move and stuff like that. The other thing I was not making sufficient use of was opportunity attacks. Your melee fighters have opportunity attacks, but you need to put them in the face of the other characters, which is kind of risky. But then you need to cause the other characters to move. So it's a kind of a 1-2. You do something like put the knight in to get the zone of control, and then maybe use the barbarian to kick people across them, or use the archer with the grappling hook, or the whirlwind and things like that, just to get people to move, so as to trigger the opportunity attacks. because it can be triggered on spell effects like that, the same way as the Overwatch stuff can be triggered by force movement. And that was another piece that I wasn't appreciating well enough to really make proper use of it. So powers that actually force movement are probably more powerful than powers that do direct damage. So Vortex is probably a more powerful spell than Fireball, for instance. Although, you know, fireballs are always fun. It's kind of an iconic signature spell, courtesy of Dungeons and Dragons, of course, for wizards that they cast fireballs. So yeah, I had a lot of problems with this scenario, and this is the first time I actually spawned on this side, fighting this direction across the breach, and it was successful. I'm not sure whether there was more cover or not going the other way or whatever, but I never seemed to get it to work going the other way. But I also noticed that I was copping on a bit more, and I was actually making more use of synergies with the powers. So, and I was keeping the, Girdle Weaver protected as well in ways that I wasn't doing previously. So we move him there, we stun, and the Overwatch triggers, and did I? So that sort of thing is the stuff you need to be looking out for constantly, getting all these kind of things working. The NPC wizard characters are just suicidal, they have no conception of cover, and are quite happy to rush into locations that put them under a crossfire or just sit in the open between turns. And of course, one of them will always attempt to go and deal with the breach, and that's nearly a character, as long as you're on Overwatch. That's a character you will get rid of pretty much every turn. However, they do get reinforcements. Quite a few reinforcements, so they can take quite a beating in terms of numbers dead before and still remain viable, or still remain a major threat. Like, so it's not just the numbers you start out with, they keep getting more. Although the spawn locations vary, and sometimes the spawn location can be quite far back, so if you can actually push them back a bit, you can really make inroads. But the cover gets less as you get deeper into the caves, so it's just more of those crystal things, which don't provide great sources of cover. The latest incarnation of the wizard, when I redid their powers, I actually forgot to give her that short range teleport. It's a really cool spell because it enables you to move from cover to cover without triggering Overwatch, and to cross obstacles that you might not otherwise get to cross. So we drop a pillar on the mage, and we're going to run around now and beat up this one, because there's gone again another mage has put himself in a very advanced position for no good reason other than well, I suppose I did get a kill, but is it worth the price, so to speak? And we get a little bit of healing there as well, which always helps. So we move the ranger forward, and I think we'll try and get rid of that one if we can. And we missed. So this guy, let's see where we put him. Missed with that spell too, can't remember exactly what it's supposed to do, so there is a reinforcement spawning. And another one bites the dust, and so basically there's three factions in operation. There is your team, which includes the professor, and then there's his students, which move separately, and then there's the opposition. And here we have another one up, doing their thing on the breach, and because I didn't have an Overwatch kicking off there at that point in time, because I'd already used it. It had been triggered from the first movement. Which is the downside sometimes of these things, because I'd rather the Overwatch stopping the enemy getting up onto the breach rather than just offing one of them that was well away from that location. Especially given how sensitive the whole thing was to how it might work out, or how who does what on the breach. So we have another spell, we get this one off, and now we won't have Overwatch again because we've again triggered, we had to trigger an action to get rid of that character. We're up here again, we kick the crystal and they bounce off the wall and disappear into the wall. But they die, which is the important bit. So this is what you can see by as you move deeper into the cave, the cover just gets lower and lower. But if I finally clued myself in that if I get into zone of control, they have to move away to cast a spell. And that will trigger an attack of opportunity. Or I can use the grapple hook and trigger an attack of opportunity directly by pulling the person towards me. They come towards me and the knight whacks them. So where to put this guy that he's not too exposed, he's not taking too many chances. And then his students go off on their rampage, but at least some of them are on Overwatch, and they missed. So this one's way back. Back too far really to be anyway effective or of use. Another student spawns. That triggers a reaction move and he levels up. The ranger has taken damage. First time in quite a while since the ranger took damage from anybody. My knight is taking damage again, but then she's always in harm's way, and she has her healing ability, which is not so bad. Plus I actually have potions this time, so I'm not completely helpless, I would say, when it comes to healing myself. No, I thought for a second there that I was actually so close that I was in melee range there, but it turns out that I was able to actually cast a spell. And we'll take the fireball anyway. The new system now, I don't know how it works. I mean, obviously you have a more complex character sheet and you have more complex options. So I presume you just get the character sheet and you select whatever powers you want when you get a level up mid-game. And here we have that character is stunned. They're not dead, but they're stunned, which is useful enough. And we have another one down, and we got healing all around, which is actually pretty good because they all needed it a really bit. The amount you heal back isn't great in comparison to the relative damage that you can take. Potions are probably the most effective healing that I've found so far. I think Father Stevens had a pretty decent healing ability, but he was effectively an NPC cleric class, and I think he healed at around the same level as a potion, but the thing is he could do it every round, which is quite powerful really. Kept the party going despite the fact that my tactics in that particular episode were probably considerably less than optimal. Don't want to leave an enemy standing behind me, and I think I made a mistake around this point that I advanced too far forward, because an enemy spawned behind me and effectively made it to the breach without me being able to intercept or stop it. So this wizard triggers an attack of opportunity and pays the price for it. But you only get one attack of opportunity, so the other one was able to move away. And turns out that whatever it is thing happened, and they both expire anyway. So the breach is sealed, and it's now just a fight for honour between the two wizarding schools. Pettysworth is back in action as soon as the breach is sealed, and it basically, if you take him out of the picture, the fight's over. So you don't really, the students aren't a priority. he's actually the priority. You have the little dialogue at the start, establishing their continued animosity, and the reasons for it. The fact that he stole the paper that was written on the napkin, and he intended to publish it on beer mats. Which reminds me of, I can't remember who it was. There's one of the big names of 19th century chemistry. I don't think it was Dalton, but it was a big name, a fairly important, significant character. Had some paper that the Royal Society wouldn't publish, and the Manchester Evening Standard, the evening newspaper, published it for him. I don't know if you get a scientific paper published in a newspaper nowadays. Or would anybody pay attention to it if it was published in a newspaper? Would it count even as published? Because there's such a huge specialised press now in the whole scientific publication thing, whereas things weren't quite as formal back in the old days. However, so once again we make use of the geography of the room, and we have a stunning attack, and we send that one reeling backwards, which is pretty effective. Now we can bring the knight up and just whack your one, which gets some healing to everybody surrounding them, all the allies surrounding, including the ones in the school faction that are not directly part of my faction. So there's a limit, I think, on how many characters you can control. All the other NPCs are just, even though they're allied, they're controlled by the computer, by their own AIs. And yeah, the big temptation with this kind of a game is that you lose focus in an advance like this, and let your units get scattered out, or you just move everybody to the limit and they don't have overwatch attacks or any means of influencing how the enemy move. So he still has quite a few of them left by the time we're getting up here, and they have actually a decent amount of cover, so we are advancing across relatively open ground into a defended position, so to speak. So now we just have to make use of our powers and our terrain and figure out where our character actually is. How far can we get? Still make the attack, and preferably not be too far out in the open. Now the little target is telling me that I'm in an attack of opportunity if I trigger movement, but I think I'm going to have to risk it. In hindsight, I think the move between the two of them might have been a better move, because they'll both be in my zone of control. But we're going to kick that, and what happened? Come on. So we bounce him back, hop him off the building on the other side, or the pillar on the other side, and he's now stunned, which is good because he's one of the more powerful magic users on the enemy team, and we have him out of action, and we're going to probably do the same thing here. And that's two of them stunned, so half the enemy, almost half the enemy team is stunned at this point in time. Which gives us a big advantage now. I think the Ice Arrow doesn't actually do a lot of damage, but it slows him down. So he's now stunned, he's got one action. And he's going to have, I think, half movement or something like that. Now, I was looking at one of my other spells, but it doesn't turn out they don't have the range to reach it. Some of the big area effect stuff actually have quite short ranges. So you have to be fairly close to make them work, and my lightning bolt is not sufficient range. And now I'm going to look at what kind of a second move can I make to get myself into a decent position. might have been better off taking or changing the turn rotation. But I suppose I already did that, so I'm the last actually in the turn to move effectively, even though I should be, or would normally be, the first. Ineffectual again by the students. They're a little bit too far back to allow the fight to get away from them. He was looking like he was going to go for cover, but he wasn't close enough. So that's the effect of the stunning on the slow. Like, he's now out in the open, and he's not able to take any further actions, and neither is the other character. So it's just these two. Now my barbarian just got double whammied by two of them, and that was enough to take her out. I was being a bit careless there. Normally I should probably have healed her up. But that is them as the breaks sometimes. If you make mistakes, you pay for it. Now, what am I going to do? I have the range on him. But we miss. And I want to take, like I said, I want to take him out. If I take him out, I have the... and that's an area that I've been caught a few times. I need to be more careful about moving up to people and make sure that I'm in the adjacent square and not 2 squares away. Because I've been caught like that. You need to watch where the boundary on the movement is and make sure you're in the right square. So with Pennyworth out of the fight, we've basically won this fight. So that contract's fulfilled. And I've also managed to do the undead contract. So I'll probably show that next week. And then I have just the Goblin contract, and I've got to go and find Fort Triumph, because apparently there's a fight there as well that I need to do. And you get messages from Father Stephen as well about that sort of stuff. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe if you have not already done so, and I'll catch you all again soon.